Hey guys, it's Di and I'm back with another Stay-at-Home Mom September video, and this is something that's been requested and asked a number of different ways, so I'm kind of just putting my own spin on it, my own take on it. And I actually sort of started to tackle this project last year during Stay-at-Home Mom September, but I know it's kind of a broad topic and people generally have a lot of questions about it. So I will link the older videos down below, but basically what I wanted to focus on today and talk about was living on just one income. And that's a big concern, I know, for a lot of people when they say, like, how do you budget or how do you do it? What they're really getting at is how do you decide to live on one income, and basically how do the logistics of it work. So I'm just going to give you my opinion on that topic today and try to stay on just that one small topic within the whole broad category of budgeting when you're a stay-at-home mom and all that sort of thing, which I kind of did a more broader topic video last year, so I'll link that down below. So basically, to start out, I know some people maybe are on the fence about whether they're going to be a stay-at-home mom before they've actually had kids, and some people are actually trying to decide whether they're going to be a stay-at-home mom actually when they're pregnant, or perhaps you already have kids, you're trying to decide whether or not you're going to continue working and that sort of thing. So it all comes down to your personal situation, your personal preference, and just your kind of specifics of the situation you have at hand, of course. But if you are really leaning towards you want to be a stay-at-home mom, but you're trying to decide how it works as far as living off of one income, my opinion and what we did that really worked for us was basically set a plan in place long before you've ever been pregnant, basically right after you get married if possible, and start planning for those future events long before they ever happen. And if you already have kids, I would imagine you could do something like this as well. There would just be like a trial run period where you could try it out when you're actually perhaps still working, but then you'd have to take the things into account where if you have one person staying at home, it is a little bit cheaper in some senses to, if you have younger children that are in daycare, you no longer have the daycare expense. If you are in a work environment where you have to have professional clothing, suits and dress shoes and that sort of thing, you no longer have that expense if one person no longer needs that. And also, I know that if you work in an office, sometimes even just silly things like people going on coffee runs and everyone's like, you know, who wants a coffee? And you raise your hand and it adds up. So all those kind of office expenses like coffee runs and things like that add up, the little small things that kind of sometimes go unnoticed, you would no longer have those expenses. Lunches, if you have the type of office environment where you have to eat out for lunch a lot and that sort of thing. So you could look at all of those and try to figure out, okay, if we're taking away a second income, but we're also taking away all those expenses, that kind of adjusts it, and here's kind of our deficit or the difference between what is left. So you could start there and then really see if there are ways to look at your current budget to alter it, and also just attempt to live off of one income and see how it goes. So I think it would still be possible to do this even if you've already had kids and that sort of thing. You just have to do a little bit different type of planning for it. And what we did that really worked for us was, even when we were in a two full-time, so a DINK, a dual income, no kids household, what we did was we lived off of one income. So any sort of item that we purchased, whether it be a house, a car, large purchases, whatever they were, we based it off of just my husband's income, and then used the extra income that I was making, whether it was full-time or part-time, as a supplementary income. I realized not all situations you may be able to do that, and as you get older your finances kind of get better and bigger and that sort of thing. But to start out, if you're able to do this after you're newly married, I think it's a wonderful way to kind of set yourself up for eventually living off of only one income, if that is what your preference or what you've already had in mind to do later on down the road is. So my husband and I talked about it when we were engaged, before we were even married. Both of our moms were stay-at-home moms for a period of time, and that was something that we really had both kind of just envisioned, so we were on the same page for that. I accepted the fact that that meant giving up my career for a period of time, and that I would have to get back into the workforce eventually later, hopefully. So once you're on the same page there, then the kind of resolution goes into, okay, well, how do we work out the financials of having someone stay at home and how to basically live off of one income? So what my suggestion would be, if you have two incomes right now, is to just trial run it and try living off of one income and see how it goes. Work out your monthly budget as far as the food, any car payments or things like that you have, insurance, any household expenses and that sort of thing. Base it all off the one income. And then use the secondary income to boost up your savings or to pay down any debts that you have, like car payments, student loans, things like that. Help knock those down. I found that that made a huge difference. We started doing this basically right after we were married. We never took my income into account, even when I was working full-time. When we were first married, I owned my own dance studio. I was basically making a full-time income off of that, even though I was kind of working part-time hours, but it's kind of a full-time job if you own your own business. If you guys have ever been in that situation, you know. So then after that, I worked full-time in kind of a human resources type position. Then after that, I went down to more of a part-time position when I was a graduate research assistant and completing my master's at a university. So regardless of my changes in income, our household budget never fluctuated. Our household budget was always the same, regardless of what income I was bringing in. So then we could use my additional income to help pay down things, to buy extraordinary things, pay for vacations and that sort of thing. And that's what really, really worked for us. Now, if you're already past that point, you're already married, you've already set your budget up around two incomes, obviously it's going to be a little bit harder to do, because what you actually will have to do is figure out where you can cut your budget down in certain areas. But we have actually gone through our budget and restructured it a number of times. The main area that we were actually able to restructure and cut the most amount of money off when we found out how much ridiculous amount of money we were spending on it when we were still dinks, two incomes, no kids. I just think that word's hilarious. Anyhow, was food. Food is like the number one area where obviously you want to buy the ample amount of food that you need. You want to buy, you know, the food that you think is best and that sort of thing. But when we were both, I always say single, but not single, but when we were married and didn't have kids, we went out to restaurants a lot, like full service, multi-course, leave a tip restaurants. And that puts a huge dent or ding in your budget. So once we sat down and really started working on our budget, figuring out places where we could cut down unnecessary expenses, that is where we made the biggest difference in our budget. Obviously with kids now, we don't eat it out that often anyway, so it's kind of, that takes care of itself. But we started doing this probably 2 or 3 years before we even had kids. We tried to limit ourselves on not going out to eat at a restaurant every single night on the weekends, and try to limit it to maybe once a week or once or twice a month. And we saw the biggest difference from doing that with our budget and changing that way that we did our lifestyle. Another thing that you can do to save money is also look at what your household expenses are, look at what you're spending money on around the house, try repurposing items, and also we buy the store brand a lot. I know sometimes the store brand isn't always cheaper, but for us a lot of times it's easiest for me to go into one store, which for me is Target, get everything I need to get. I actually think Up and Up brand at Target is usually always cheaper. They usually always have coupons on Target.com. And sometimes it's even better quality than the name brand item on the shelf sitting right next to it. After I've been using Up and Up items for a number of years, my preference, if say if they're out of the Up and Up item and I might have to grab that store or that name brand item, I get it and I'm like, oh, I like the Up and Up brand better. So in my situation, I've actually found that the store brand a lot of times is my preference. I actually like the way that it functions or feels, or if it's a lotion or something, the way that it smells, better than even some of the name brands sitting on the shelf next to it. So that's another great way to save some money and kind of help out your budget. So overall, I mean, I'd say the main things to living on one income are try to do it as early as you possibly can. So if you are newly married or looking at getting married, whatever your situation is, as early on as you can, try living off one income. Or if it's not possible to live off just one and both people are working, try living off of 1.5. And then you're setting yourself up really well, because whatever money that you're saving or paying down things on is helping you get in that better financial situation for the future. So hopefully that makes sense. That's just kind of what we did. It really honestly has worked for us. So I know a lot of times when people are asking about budgeting and financing and that sort of thing, you know, you don't want to get into like the specifics of it, but that is one general rule that I think that if you're kind of at the beginning of your journey, it could definitely help you out and maybe help you make a decision as far as whether or not being a stay-at-home mom is for you, whether it's something you want to do, and that sort of thing. So hopefully I answered people's questions that have made video requests for this type of video for Stay-at-Home Mom September. If you have anything question-wise or anything you additionally want me to go into down below, feel free to ask me questions down below. And thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.